Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett wasn't expecting kindness. Not that morning. She was tired, mentally and physically, barely holding together the seams of a brutal 3-week travel schedule. Hearings in Sacramento, strategy talks in San Antonio, a late-night community forum in Tulsa. Her suitcase had become her closet, and her rest came in slivers. But today wasn't about politics or policy. It was about family. Her cousin Devin, more like a brother to her, had passed suddenly. Just 42. Liver failure. She couldn't skip this, not his funeral, not the promise she'd made to speak. So, at 6:30 a.m., she moved briskly through Dallas Love Field Airport, dressed in respectful black, coffee in one hand, her phone in the other, juggling grief with logistics. Her flight to Jackson was due to board in 40 minutes. Then came the first red flag, a fleeting smirk from the airline staffer at check-in. Just a flicker. But she saw it. She'd seen it before. She calmly gave her ID and boarding pass. "I'm on flight 2376 to Jackson," she said, checking my carry-on. The agent looked at his monitor, typed a few times, then frowned. "You're not in the system," he said flatly. Jasmine leaned in. "That's not possible. I already checked in. Look, here's my pass." She handed him her phone. He stared, said nothing, then murmured, "You've been reassigned. You'll need to wait." "Reassigned to what?" she asked. He didn't answer. He just signaled to another staffer. The second woman barely glanced Jasmine's way. "Flagged for random review," she said, voice dull, bored. "We need to verify your credentials." "I've taken this flight 4 times this year," Jasmine replied. "This has never happened." The male agent stood abruptly. "Ma'am, if you don't calm down, I'll have to ask you to step aside." Jasmine's voice remained steady. I asked a question, calmly. "Stand over there," he snapped. People nearby began watching. A few had phones in hand. Someone whispered her name. "That's Congresswoman Crockett." But recognition didn't matter here. She stepped to the side, took out her government-issued badge. "I'm on official travel," she said. They barely looked. "Doesn't override protocol," the woman said. Something felt off. Jasmine knew the difference between a glitch and a grudge. This wasn't random. Still, she said, "Fine, but I want a supervisor." That's when the man called out, "Security." She hadn't raised her voice. She hadn't resisted. But now, she was being handled like a problem. She crossed her arms and stared at a spot on the floor. It was her anchor. She wasn't going to flinch. Behind her, whispers grew louder. Phones were recording. A woman mouthed, "I'm sorry." Jasmine gave a brief nod. Nice, but not helpful. She just wanted the truth. 2 TSA officers approached. Their pace was neutral, neither urgent nor casual. That made it worse. Suspicion was already baked in. "Ma'am, come with us," one said. "Why?" Jasmine asked, her voice still calm. "Random review." He added, "Don't make this harder than it needs to be." She showed her ID and boarding pass again. "This is government travel. That's a real badge. Why am I being pulled?" No answer. "We're not asking," the other officer said. That quiet threat hung in the air. She looked at the gate screen. Her flight still showed on time, boarding in minutes. She thought of her mother waiting in Jackson, Devin's daughter, who'd asked her to speak. Jasmine exhaled slowly and walked with the officers. They took her through a side door. Fluorescent lights hummed above. A third officer joined them and muttered something out of earshot. The next sentence chilled her. "We'll need a full pat-down." She blinked. "You have no cause," she said softly. "This is over the line." The reply, "File a complaint later." No warrant, no basis. But Jasmine complied. She raised her arms. Cold hands searched her with clinical detachment. Her bag was opened, documents shuffled, no explanations, just intrusion. 10 minutes passed. 15. Finally, she asked, Why was I pulled? Who changed my seat? One officer shrugged. That's airline. We came because you were being difficult. That word snapped something. Difficult? I complied. I asked, questions. That's not a crime. Another shrug. 7:16. Her flight was gone. A silence fell. Then she sat in the metal chair. Not because she was weak, but because there was nothing more to fight for. She was missing a funeral, missing a goodbye she'd promised to keep. She was being punished. For what? She still didn't know. One TSA officer stepped out to make a call. The other leaned against the wall, eyes averted. Jasmine opened her phone. One text. I was pulled. I missed the flight. I need you here. She hit send. A few terminals away, her husband Franklin Rhodes was already in the car. He hadn't come in earlier per Jasmine's request. It's a short flight, she'd said. Don't worry. But she said need, and he knew what that meant. A retired federal judge, Franklin had the calm intensity of someone who didn't need to yell to be heard. When he entered the terminal at 7:36, Jasmine stood quietly. Her hair was mussed, her papers disordered, but her poise was intact. Franklin scanned the room, the agents, the officers, the damage. You okay? He asked. She nodded once. Then he turned to the IG officer. Who's in charge here? The agent hesitated. Can I ask who you are? Franklin Rhodes, retired federal judge, 9th Circuit. Who's in charge? The officer backed off. A supervisor arrived quickly, hands fumbling a lanyard. Judge Rhodes, we didn't know. Doesn't matter, Franklin said. Why was my wife's seat changed? The supervisor fumbled. I'll check. Then check. Franklin turned to Jasmine. Did you yell? No. Threaten anyone? Never. A young agent, the one who'd called security, stood nearby. Franklin stepped closer. Why did you call security? She wouldn't back down, the agent said. From what? She asked why her seat changed. Did she shout? No. Threaten? No. Franklin's voice dropped. Then what you did was escalate a non-event into a false threat. The agent froze. You ignored a federal ID, detained a sitting congresswoman. That's not a mistake. That's targeted mistreatment. By now, more staff were appearing. Another agent returned, confused by the scene. The apologies began. The supervisor tried. Ma'am, we'd like to rebook. No, Franklin said. She didn't need a better seat. She needed respect 20 minutes ago. Jasmine added, You don't get to fix this with upgrades. You should have treated me like a person, not a problem. The gate manager arrived, flustered. Judge Rhodes, Congresswoman Crockett, save it, Franklin snapped. I want a name. Who made the call to security? That's a personnel. So is discrimination. Franklin stepped closer. You obstructed a federal official. You better be ready to explain why. The TSA officers stood silent now. The original agent had vanished. The terminal was quiet, but passengers had noticed. Someone whispered. Someone recorded. The truth had eyes now, and it wasn't going away quietly. Franklin didn't raise his voice. He never needed to. His words carried more weight in silence. You called security because someone asked a question. That's not protocol. That's prejudice. The manager stammered. We're reviewing. No, you're reacting. Jasmine didn't say anything. She just watched. She wasn't there to make them feel better. Franklin went on. This incident isn't isolated. It's symptomatic. The supervisor tried again. We'd like to offer a first-class rebook. She doesn't want a seat. She wants dignity. Jasmine finally said, You should have reviewed it the moment I was flagged. Not now, when there's heat. Another beat of silence. Then Franklin checked his watch. You've cost her a funeral. You owe more than a ticket. The manager opened his mouth but closed it again. Jasmine locked eyes with him. Don't pretend this was confusion. This was judgment. More people were watching now. Word had spread. A woman in a hoodie recorded quietly from a corner. A young man posted something from the charging station. The story was no longer inside that room. It was online. Jasmine adjusted her blazer strap. "Let's go," she told Franklin. "You sure?" "Yeah. There's nothing left to say." They walked out. No one followed. No one offered perks. Just silence. Behind them, regret lingered like perfume in still air. It wasn't just about her anymore. By the time they reached the parking lot, Jasmine's phone buzzed nonstop. She ignored it. Franklin stood beside her, watching the terminal like it still owed them something. "They didn't expect me," he said. "They didn't expect anyone to care," she replied. "You okay?" "I will be." And that was the difference. Inside, damage control had begun. Videos were posted. One showed Jasmine walking calmly with TSA. Another caught Franklin demanding accountability. In a break room, the young agent, Cullen, sat slumped, staring at the floor. "You could have just moved her," his manager said. "That's all she asked." "I didn't know who she was," Cullen muttered. "Doesn't matter. You don't get to treat people like that, title or not." Cullen didn't respond. The weight was sinking in. He hadn't just overstepped. He had been seen doing it. Jasmine never shouted, never broke down. And now, people knew. Franklin leaned on their car while Jasmine read messages. One from her aunt. "He would have been proud. Don't let them shrink you." Jasmine replied, "They can spin it, but it's out." "You did everything right," Franklin said. Even when they didn't. She sat still for a while, then asked, "Did I handle it right?" Franklin nodded. "You didn't give them what they wanted. That takes power." She looked away. "They treated me like I was invisible. You weren't. Everyone saw." Later, at their hotel in Jackson, Jasmine stared at the untouched food tray. The funeral had ended. Her family had sent pictures. They didn't say they were disappointed, but Jasmine heard it in the silence. She checked the news. Headlines. Everywhere. Congresswoman detained at gate. TSA under fire. But what caught her off guard were the comments. Thousands of people shared stories. Nurses, veterans, mothers. People who had been pulled aside for no reason, treated like they didn't matter. It wasn't just about her. It was about something that had been happening forever. A woman wrote, "I cried in the bathroom. No one cared." A man said, "My father missed his heart surgery. They didn't even apologize." Jasmine felt something tighten in her chest. This wasn't just Gate 22B. It was America. Franklin walked in. "You're everywhere," he said. "I know. You want to talk?" "Not yet." He sat beside her. "You did the right thing." Jasmine stared at the window. "They acted like I didn't belong, even with ID in hand." "You think they'll learn?" She sighed. "I don't know, but maybe someone watching will." Because this wasn't about spectacle. It was about stillness. The kind that forces people to see what they usually ignore. The look on Cullen's face. The realization. That truth had walked in quietly and left loudly. The next week, back in D.C., she skipped the TV interviews. She didn't want to be a meme. She wrote a letter. It ran in newspapers across the country. In it, she said, "This isn't about one airline. It's about how fast we dismiss people without pedigree. Dignity shouldn't depend on recognition. It should be automatic." That line was quoted everywhere. Eventually, the airline released a formal apology, naming her directly, but by then, the public had already chosen its narrative. Jasmine Crockett wasn't just a lawmaker. She had become a stand-in for every person ever told their presence was a problem, and she hadn't needed to scream to make it heard. A week later, Jasmine sat on a bench at Union Station. She'd just met with civil rights interns. They didn't ask about laws, they asked about the airport. One said, "You didn't say much, but you made it loud." Jasmine nodded. Because sometimes stillness speaks louder than rage. She remembered what Franklin had told her. Real power is knowing who you are, and not letting anyone take that away. That was the story, not just of injustice, but of resolve, because this wasn't rare. It just got caught on camera. And next time, it might be someone without a title, without protection. So the question becomes, how do we treat them? Jasmine pulled out her phone and wrote to her team, "Next town hall, we open with a story, not about politics, about people, about what happened at Gate 22B. Because stories matter. They're mirrors. They ask, if that were me, what would I have done? And if I had power, how would I have treated her?" This wasn't about guilt. It was about reflection. A reminder, dignity isn't earned. It's owed. So to everyone ever talked down to, sidelined, or silenced, your story matters. One day someone will tell it, even if no one's watching. Because how we treat people in quiet moments says everything about who we are in loud ones. If this story moved you, share it. Let it echo. Let it be more than a headline. Let it be a shift, a beginning, not an end.